script up here. And you're blue and I'm black, is that right?
Yes, you're blue. So I'm saying the first part. I'm doing his bio.
Okay.
And then you're going to say like the minister type stuff.
All right, great.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything in black is good.
All righty. Are you going to be up here, Jay, doing this? Reading this from the pulpit?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Ann Pearl, and I'm your worship associate today. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn number 1000 in your teal hymnal, Morning Has Come.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Gunnell Rydstrom. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Hudson Valley. Whether you have been with this congregation a decade or more, or this is your first time visiting, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. Whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. Whatever your heritage, we welcome you. And we respectfully acknowledge the territory on which our church building sits as the ancestral homeland of the Munsee, Lenape, and Wappinger people. And there is one important special announcement. At noon today, we will have the annual meeting on Zoom. So 12 o'clock noon gives you time to get home and tune in on Zoom. And the links are in several places, most prominently in the service reminder yesterday, that went out yesterday morning. But it's also in the e-news and on the website. And in a special email that went out 2 days ago announcing the annual meeting. So it's in 4 places, and it's at the top in each of the 4 places. So we need a quorum, so please attend. And for other most up-to-date information, please refer to the weekly e-news and to the website. The website is also a place where you can find contact information for staff, board members, and other congregational leaders. And please join us for conversation after the service. As it's raining, I assume we will stay in the sanctuary to have conversation. If you are watching the live stream, you will receive a link at the end of the service for a Zoom virtual coffee hour. If you recently joined the congregation or as a recent visitor and would like to receive a weekly e-news, please email us your name and we will make sure you are added to the e-news list. We can also answer questions you might have. The email address is uucroton@gmail.com, or fill out the yellow card at the back of the pew and drop it in the collection plate. For those of you here in the sanctuary, please silence your cell phones at this time. And once again, we welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Hudson Valley.
We gather this day, a community of faith. We come in search of life's meaning. All of us know despair and exaltation. All bear burdens. All have moments of weakness and times of strength. All sing songs of sorrow and love. May our worship bring us strength along our way. In the presence of the sacred, may we come to know our true selves, finding a fresh impulse to love and to do good. Amen.
Our chalice lighting today is by Langston Hughes. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? Now please join me in saying our unison affirmation. The words can be found in your order of service. Inspired by love, our mission is to seek our true nature, connect deeply and openly, and act for justice.
Good morning, everybody. Today, we honor our graduating senior, Ben Clayton, as we mark a milestone in his life. Before we ask Ben to come up, let me first tell you a little bit about him. Ben has been a member of this fellowship since he was a baby. He went to RE for many years, then did coming of age, and then graduated AL our whole lives. He also liked doing midnight runs since middle school, including this past March, his senior year. Ben graduated from Longview School in Brewster on Friday, where he spent the last 2 years of high school. Originally, he went to school in Sleepy Hollow High School, and there he participated in chess club, ran cross country for 2 years, and volunteered with 10,000 PB&Js, and other service activities. He also attended several marches with his family and others, like March for Our Lives, the Women's March, and rallies against Asian American hate. During the pandemic, he made a change and found Longview School in Brewster, New York, where he enjoyed learning about new topics like philosophy, psychology, literature of social justice, and Japanese. Longview is a democratic school, and there he contributed to running the school, making decisions as a member of the Judicial Committee, and keeping the school running through various clerkships like stocking supplies for the school, writing the checks to pay the school's bills, revising the school's law book, and various other hands-on jobs. While there, Ben was nominated to the National Society for High School Scholars, and on Friday's graduation, he received New York's Triple C Award for courage, commitment, and character, as well as Longview's citation as a fan fiction fiend. quote, for always having his nose in a good story, end quote. Next year, Ben will be attending Wheaton College in Massachusetts with a trustee's scholarship. He will pursue interests in psychology, sociology, history, and English. He will also pursue an interest in fantasy writing. Ben, you want to come up to the pulpit? As Rev Josh says a few things. Sure. You can stand right here.
In Unitarian Universalist tradition, bridging is what we call the transitional time of the late teen years when a graduating high school senior moves into young adulthood. When we dedicate babies and young children into our community, we dedicate ourselves to them. We give them a long-stemmed rose with the thorns removed. The buds are symbols of the beauty of each individual and unfolding life. We offer roses with thornless stems as a symbol of our desire to protect the children of our UU family from all that could be harmful. We have a thorny long stem rose ready for Ben. And for this rite of passage, again a rose whose stem this time is not so carefully stripped of thorns, Though adult life is occasionally sharply painful, as well as rich in color and texture, we urge our young adults to engage life fully. Ben, will you take this rose? May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love, and your hands continue to do work for justice.
Also, Ben, please accept this small gift from the congregation.
Our wish and hope for you is that you may become even more fully yourself as you navigate the new waters of young adulthood. May the challenges you face be an opportunity to grow. May your gifts serve the world, and through all this, may you be blessed by knowing yourself to be whole and worthy. Our congregation will now create, oh, are we doing that?
Yep, we are.
Okay, our congregation, I didn't want to commit us to something before we did it. Our congregation will now create a covered bridge for you to walk through, symbolizing your movement from youth to young adulthood.
What we're going to do is people just on the end aisle, we're just going to raise our hands like this, maybe not touching because there's going to be enough little
Who wore deodorant today? Ben, we send you off with love and affection, prayers that blessings may attend you, and hugs to let you know our hearts go with you. Go now in peace and quiet wisdom into the world with kindness and love.
Well, guess we just had our first joy of the day. Let us now bear witness to the joys and sorrows experienced in our community. If you have a brief yet personally significant joy or sorrow that you are willing to share, please come up to this microphone. Please speak directly into the mic. Get as close as you can, so that everyone, including the people watching at home, can hear you. If you would prefer to only have a candle lit without speaking, please just stand and I will light a candle for you.
I'm Margie Kemper, and it has been a joy to be a member here for the last 20 years. And today it's a joy to say my husband became a member this morning.
Well, I have a slight sorrow. Yesterday I went to a dissolution ceremony at the UU of Queens. Their membership went so far down, they decided they had to close down. So I went to the ceremony. It was just beautiful. And the upside is that they're selling their building and giving away most of the money to community groups and various UU groups. So it was just, and they were all there. So it was just sad yet wonderful.
I have a sorrow. A few weeks ago, I shared that my cousin, who I feel the most connection to, was diagnosed with a very severe form of leukemia after a multi-year battle of breast cancer. And regretfully, she passed away about 10 days ago. She was a real force of nature. She was a social worker in Switzerland, very passionate, very hard to believe she's gone. So keep her in your thoughts. That was Jessica.
I found out this week that my older sister was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. We won't know until the 21st what the PET scan will reveal her next steps are, so keep Deborah in your prayers.
Well, I actually have, I'm going to try to be brief. The second one is a little less brief, but I think it's worth hearing. The big joy this week is that Terry has joined me in retirement as of Friday. After a great career of helping people and, as a nurse practitioner and really doing a lot of good. And I'm very proud of her, and I'm looking forward to our next chapter, which starts tomorrow. Her work email was cut off last night. She got up this morning. It wasn't there on her phone. And I said, yep, the withdrawal is happening. Now, I wasn't here last week, and this is sort of a joy and a sorrow. The sorrow is, since I've retired, I made a good friend in Croton that I walk with every morning, and he lost his wife 2 weeks ago to cancer. She was sick, but it did happen very quickly, so it was unexpected, and they had no plan of what to do. And she's Haitian. She has a big Haitian family. They were desperate to find a place for burial, to have a service. She was Catholic, so they used Holy Name, but they wanted a place to have a get-together, a gathering after. And I contacted Rita and Susie and the powers that be here, and we were able to make the hall available to them last Saturday. And I have to tell you, the joy was seeing how thankful they were. And all these Haitians, they're lovely people. They were so moved by the Black Lives Matter sign. They asked a lot about the place, and they were so thankful. I said, believe me, the congregation here would be very happy that we helped you. So that was sort of a nice ending to what was a tough ride for John and his family. So I think I'm very happy about it, that we were able to help them. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Pat Krugman. I have a very special joy to share. We have had so many awful news about all these shootings for way too many years. I have a young girl, Ava, who is in first grade at my after-school program, and she came to me the day after the shooting in Uvalde and said, Miss Pat, you are not going to believe what my crazy teacher did today. She opened up the window at recess time, and we all went out through the window. And I said, wow, how creative and wonderful. Was it fun? It was so great. It made me so happy. She had no idea that they were in the middle of a drill. And there are some wonderful teachers out there that are working so hard to take care of our kids no matter what. And I just want to thank all the teachers that love their kids with all their hearts to be that creative.
I have a joy. My dad came to visit from Ohio for the first time since 2019, and he got to be here for Maggie's preschool graduation yesterday, which was very cute.
This is neither a joy nor a sorrow, but a request, hopefully a polite one. I, for one, have trouble reading the words to the hymnal on a cloudy day with very few of the overhead lights on. I politely request that somebody turn the lights on so that I may read the words to the hymnal. Thank you.
Can you do, Gary, can you do me a favor? Is the backlight switch on?
Is the backlight switch on? No, it's I know, I just want to make sure the back one is on. Okay. All right, we're good. Thank you.
I just want to say that obviously a lot of joy this weekend with Ben's graduation on Friday, and this was just such a and it was strangely, as a mom, it was also mixed with some strange sorrows for me. I missed my parents, who were always at all of these events and couldn't be here, and was thinking about our grandparents a lot. And I just want to, but I want to say that it's so sweet and thankful to Jane and other people, and certainly Reverend Josh here. Thank you for this community. I was doing one last momish thing. I'm making a slideshow for Ben, which is really for me. And it was using it as an excuse to look at pictures and things, and I can't tell you the number of pictures of this fellowship and the role it played for our family. So I know it's been rough, and we have not always been here as much through this time period, but you're in our hearts, and we thank you for all the ways you love all of us and all the families here. Thank you.
We also acknowledge all the unspoken joys and sorrows held within the sanctuary of our hearts, and all those people who have yet to find a spiritual home where they too can share their joys and sorrows.
I invite you now to join in the spirit of meditation. You may wish to do so by sitting up a bit straighter in your chair or the pew. Put your feet flat on the floor to ground you to the earth. Close your eyes if you wish, or leave them just partially open. And slowly take in a nice deep breath and gently release it, releasing all of the stress of the week. Humans often disagree on most things in life, from arguing over the best restaurant in town to the greatest football player of all time. However, most humans, ancient or modern, from east or west, living in mountains or in deserts, would agree that the ultimate purpose of any human endeavor is to find happiness. Sometimes we do find happiness from both individual and collective success. But the fundamental predicament of life, as Buddha suggests, is that happiness derived from earthly success does not last forever. In fact, contrary to our expectations, suffering, the exact opposite to happiness, often pervades our lives. Once, back in college, one of my friends, while referring to the sine wave on an oscilloscope, said, if we could plot happiness over time like the voltage, it would follow a similar pattern. Regardless of the true shape of happiness over time, my friend, at least in philosophy, was not wrong after all. None of us knew about Taoism back then, but he was right on track. Happiness and sadness often come in phases. Buddha apparently found a solution by identifying the cause of suffering and proposing an intervention. According to the Buddhist philosophy, unfulfilled expectations cause suffering. Given the causal assumption is correct logically, if we do not have any unfulfilled desires, we cannot suffer. In other words, we find something we may call happiness. But how can we avoid the trap of unfulfilled desires? The Buddhist suggestion is quite simple. Just avoid any desires. No desire would lead to no unfulfilled expectations, which in turn would lead to no suffering. Let us now be together in a moment of silent meditation.
Our reading today is from Hamlet by William Shakespeare. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. To die, to sleep, no more. And by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There is the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of disprized love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietest make with a bare bodkin? Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death? The undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others we know not of. Thus, conscience doth make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment with disregard their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. Now, please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn number 95, There Is More Love Somewhere. That's in your gray hymnal.
One of the experiences one never forgets as a new parent is taking your kids to the pediatrician. Now, for some reason, it kind of felt like you're getting a grade from someone who kind of knows about kids and is in charge of them. And you know, when you're a new parent, there aren't many yardsticks for just how well am I doing at this. One day, our regular pediatrician was out, so we had to go to another doctor in her practice. These were the days where Thomas was a little older than an infant, maybe not quite a toddler, one, maybe two. And he had some kind of croup, cough, Lord knows what was going on. This new doctor, prescribed some medicine. And like responsible parents, we went to the pharmacy to pick it up. I don't remember the name of this medicine anymore, but I remember distinctly paying $50 for it. And when the pharmacist brought it out, it was in this little bitty bottle. I looked, 2 ounces was all it was. A week or so later, we came back for a follow-up visit, this time with our regular guy. And I said, hey man, that medicine your colleague told us to get is without a doubt, drop for drop, the most expensive liquid I own. $50 for 2 ounces. I could get some really good scotch for that unit price. He laughed hard at that observation. He said, well, I don't usually prescribe such things myself. Find a virus gets better after a couple of days, whether you prescribe something or not. But the placebo effect is a real thing. I suppose for $50, that isn't such a bad life lesson to learn. The placebo effect is a real thing. This morning, I want to explore with you the notion of expectations. There are spiritual gifts to having high expectations and spiritual gifts for having low expectations. The placebo effect works because of our expectations. The doctor prescribes a pill and calls it medicine. Instead, it's a sugar pill or some other substance that has no medical effect. But because we believe that it is medicine and it will work, somehow or another, people get better. It's as if the pill did work, though from a biochemistry point of view, it should have had no effect. This is kind of the starting point, I think, for considering expectations. If you think you can do it, you can. In my early ministry, I became enamored with Tony Robbins and his Awaken the Giant Within program. I kind of think of Tony Robbins as one of those, kind of the ultimate self-help guru, the power of positive thinking. And while there's nothing wrong with what he has to say, I came to question if it was really the answer for me. Much of what he says is more or less common sense. There's sort of a quip or a joke that says that if you have the wherewithal to make it to a Tony Robbins seminar, you probably don't need a Tony Robbins seminar. If you have a vision, you'll work toward it. That's what he says, if you can motivate yourself sufficiently. And he lays out a plan on how to make your vision come to life and how to motivate yourself. It's not all that different from other things, The Secret, something else you might have seen on Oprah, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, I came to see that Tony Robbins' program is kind of like that placebo effect. Great things happen, and expect great things, and great things will happen. No one that you lead will ever rise above your expectations of them. There's a lot of power of positive thinking, and that can go a long way. As my pediatrician pointed out, the placebo effect is real. Now, Robbins was trying to hook into that vision of the American dream that we have for ourselves, despite what our circumstances of our birth may be. According to he's kind of hooking into this narrative in American culture that we can be like the heroes of a Horatio Alger stories that go from rags to riches, to rise above wherever we find ourselves. This, too, is the theme of the book by Charles Dickens, Great Expectations. I remember distinctly having to read that novel in high school. In it, the protagonist Pip is a young man trying to make it in the world as a gentleman and a man of means in 19th century London. He has a benefactor helping him to refine his social skills. And this unknown benefactor has high hopes for Pip, literally great expectations. He tries to nurture Pip from afar and arrange things so that he is happy and can live that kind of upper class life that they're aspiring to. And that if you believe it, you can do it. That's how we like to believe life will work out. Sadly, of course, things rarely are that smooth, which is probably why Tony Robbins has repeat customers. So often, reality does not live up to our wishes or expectations, our desires. There's a difference between the world as it is and the world as we wish it to be. That delta, the difference between those two things, the world as it is and the world as we wish it to be, is what the Buddha called suffering. Years ago, I had the opportunity to be a part of a ministers group for colleagues who were serving or about to be serving large congregations. This was shortly after I had become senior minister in Wilmington, Delaware. And a friend of mine from Pennsylvania, who was in my minister's cluster back home, was also in this program. And so we had gotten to know each other pretty well. And I told him I was impressed because his church was doing some really interesting stuff, experimenting with what we would call multiple campuses or multi-site ministry. The church had been kind of in the suburbs. They bought another church in downtown and had 2 campuses, both of which had services on Sunday morning. Kind of an unusual thing, but kind of experimental too. Pretty outside the box stuff, even for these days. And as we were chatting about, because I was very curious about how this was going, he smiled and he said, "I believe in better living through lower expectations." It's funny because it's true. If you don't have high expectations, you can't be disappointed. If there's a difference between the world as it is and the world as we think it should be or would like it to be, then we kind of have 2 choices when we're caught in the middle there, right? We can either change the world to meet our expectations, or we can change our expectations to more realistically meet what is before us. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that changing the world is off the table. Humanity has always benefited from people who dared to dream bigger and better than others. Plus, our world, let's face it, is pretty messed up and is in desperate need of being fixed. However, it is obviously pretty hard to change the world, certainly in a fast enough manner for most of our satisfaction. Now, I'm not saying that we should let standards slide and a bottom line beyond which we shall not go. Lord knows there's nothing wrong with having boundaries and naming them for others. I have no problem with that at all. And indeed, naming boundaries is a healthy thing. But most of the time, or at least too often, our flights of fancy go beyond our basic needs to survive. We want things. We fool ourselves into thinking we should have them. I see a brand new car my neighbor just bought. Why don't I have a new car? When can I get that new thing? If it wasn't for my spouse and kids wasting all their money on foolishness, then I would be able to have a better car than my neighbor. Those are the kind of, we may not consciously think that, but maybe we do. But subconsciously, those kinds of stories are back there that we tell ourselves without sometimes even really knowing it. Therapists call these narrative loops, stories we tell ourselves to justify our feelings. The Buddha called it what it was, desire or greed, and said it was one of the 3 poisons. There's nothing wrong with being like Pip and expecting or striving to do and be better. There are spiritual gifts that come from having high expectations, particularly for oneself. But one can imagine that if you lived your whole life that way, you're going to be disappointed in many things. Donald Trump was so disappointed that he didn't win certain states, that he and all the pundits expected him to win, that when he didn't, he chose to deny reality. And he demanded that others deny that reality to appease his ego. The opposite, right, of what we should do in dealing with suffering. At some point, we need to adapt our expectations to reality, while not letting the way things have always been dominate our thinking. Expectations, therefore, have a lot of tricky aspects to them. Perhaps one of the most creative responses to this thicket of spiritual issues around high expectations and low expectations and spiritual practice come from the late, great Thich Nhat Hanh. You know I got to get a little bit more Buddhism in before I go, right? Anyway, Thich Nhat Hanh, Zen Buddhist teacher, activist, monk, passed away just a few months ago, actually, wrote many, many books on many topics. One of his favorites was dealing with difficult emotions, such as anger or revenge. Thich Nhat Hanh was exiled from his native Vietnam during the war and after the war, worked extensively with both peace activists and American Vietnam vets, would bring both of them together in retreats and things like that. And so he saw firsthand the emotional and psychological effects of trauma and what war did to these vets. Thich Nhat Hanh came up with a spiritual practice to help deal with these emotions that were causing people so much suffering. One of the most famous was what he called the half smile. The idea is that if you're feeling anger or even hatred or just sadness, he tells you to smile, to make yourself look happy. Put a happy expression on, even when you're sad. Modern psychology calls this fake it to make it, right? Act like you have compassion, practice acting like you feel compassion, and pretty soon, over time, you will authentically feel compassion. Couples therapist Harville Hendricks famously had a whole series of exercises that he would take, and he's not a Buddhist by any means, but he would use these exercises with couples he was treating that worked on kind of a similar premise. Act or behave toward your partner with kindness and consideration, even if you don't feel that way. It gives space for other emotions to come out, and maybe stimulate something in the brain that genuinely experiences that emotion over time. Now, I don't swear by it as the fix to every problem in your life, but it's an interesting perspective when we consider about expectations. It's almost like pulling off the placebo effect on yourself. Finally, in thinking about expectations from kind of a spiritual perspective, we cannot neglect the ultimate expectation. What happens after we die? We could call this our existential expectation, right? Existentialism, as a philosophy and as a theological school, concerns itself with our existence. Why do we exist rather than not? Or, if we can do a variation on that today, we might ask expectantly, what happens to us after we die? They actually tell us this in seminary, but then swear us to secrecy, so sorry, I can't give you that answer. Don't I wish, right? So often people come to us ministers with that expectation, that we have all the answers. Of course, Unitarian Universalism is really about refining the questions along with the answers you speak. And no one asked the question better than our friend Billy Shakespeare. To be or not to be, Hamlet proclaims, that is the question. I love Shakespeare when he gets all existential as he does here. Hamlet's famous monologue may be the most eloquent reflection on life and death that the English language has ever produced. It is as if all of humanity is saying these words with Hamlet to the universe itself. We all know the words, we've all heard the quotes. Heck, people lift lines from that speech and make whole movies out of it. The 6th Star Trek movie is called The Undiscovered Country. for goodness sake. I remember learning this speech in high school, and we all laughed, trying to figure out what a bear bodkin is exactly. Basically, Hamlet's saying that humanity suffers so much. Trouble seems to follow us no matter where we go or what we do. So why not kill yourself? Why not just die? Why not have no more worries about the troubles in this world? Why not? His answer, expectations. We do not know what happens to us after we die. No one has come back and told us. And so since it might be worse than here, or at least unknown, we have to put up with this world and make it the best we can. Okay, maybe that last little part was a little bit of my own personal commentary. Hamlet as a character had a bit more of an ego than arriving at that conclusion. But he raises at least one good point. It is important that we all reflect on death. I'm not saying that we should be morbid and obsessive, but I am saying that reflecting on our death is an important spiritual practice, what is often called memento mori. We do this not because we have any specific expectation about what the afterlife holds for us, but rather because remembering that our days are finite gives them more meaning. Every day we are alive is one we will never get back. And when you're gone, well, no one knows. But in that dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others we know not of. Time stands still for no one. And if we cannot know what happens to us after we die, we at least know that we can and should make the most of every day we have in this world in the present. In one sense, it's easy to say, don't have expectations, only be in the present. But realistically, that doesn't work so well. We cannot exclusively be in the present. Everyone acts as if tomorrow is going to happen for us, at least us, if not the rest of the world. The issue is, what do we do with those expectations? Do we hang ourselves with them, looking always to the lifestyles of the rich and famous on TV, wishing that we had that life and therefore destined to be forever disappointed? Or do our expectations motivate to dream big and imagine for ourselves a life for ourselves that is bigger and better than the circumstances we find ourselves in? Do we adjust how we feel about the world to meet realistic expectations? Or do we demand that the world conform to our expectations of it? The civil rights movement in the 1960s is an interesting case study here. For many years, African American people were told to adjust their expectations to society that demanded their subservience. But at a certain point, they said no. This time, rather than us lowering our expectation to meet America's racist ways, we expect you to become anti-racist and to adjust to having everyone live equally. It isn't pleasant, and I'm sure it was tempting to give up. The difference between the world as it is and the world as it ought to be is called suffering, nonetheless. But are we willing to undergo that suffering for the sake of justice for generations of Americans to come? The civil rights movement responded, yes. Come up to our standards, rather asking us to go down to yours. And so may we carefully examine our expectations, not just if they're realistic or not. As you've heard, unrealistic expectations may bring suffering, but that suffering may be worth it. Rather, let us carefully observe how our expectations affect ourselves. Do we push ourselves to perfection? Do we push our children to perfection? Or do we find a balance so that all of our remaining days are filled with meaning and joy? I love you. Go in peace. Amen. I invite you now to sing hymn number 114, Forward Through the Ages. The tune may be familiar to some of you. Please rise as you are willing and able.
Each week, we make an offering from the bounty that we are blessed to enjoy. We do this in a spirit of love and generosity, aware that we have benefited from those who have gone before, those who in their turn gave generously. Our offering goes to support the work of love and justice undertaken by this community. Today's offering will also be shared with Neighbors Link. Please refer to our e-newsletter or website for more information. You can make your donation in several ways. If present in the sanctuary, you may give cash or a check in the offering plate as it comes by. You may also scan the QR code in your order of service. From your homes, you can make your donation via credit card or PayPal using the links provided in the e-newsletter. Please remember to give a little extra to compensate for the 3% surcharge. Or, if you prefer, you can always mail us a check. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. Please join me now in the dedication of the offering. The words are in your order of service. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith. Please join me now in extinguishing the chalice. The words are also found in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
With increased sensitivity, we return now to the world of miracles. May we keep open to the miraculous that we encounter both within ourselves and in the world. Amen.
If you'd like to sing along with hymn 100, I will be honored.
River in my soul.